Hello everyone, welcome to our new marketing webinar about the ROI of Nano Influencer. As you have seen in the invitation and here on that chart, we have used a quite provocative title with 0 followers and €4 ROI. So before we start, we would like to ask you, what do you think? Do you think is that a realistic number? Is that a bit high? We would be very curious to have your answers. So please already use the Q&A area to publish your answers. We will be very glad to see after a couple of minutes your feedback, and maybe we can then use that to actually show you concrete results with Raphael later on. So before we start, I'd like to introduce actually our webinar speakers. So Raphael Schwartz and myself are working at Territory Influence Agency. That's the full service influencer marketing partner across Europe, but also beyond. And we are part of Bertelsmann Group. Raphael is based in Austria. I'm currently based in France. So to continue that international journey, we have Paul Goodwin from the UK. Paul Goodwin is our international analytic consultant at IRI. And IRI is one of the original innovators in big data. They have the largest set of data to help FMCG, retail, OTC, healthcare, and media companies to grow their business. Also today, we wanted to take a couple of seconds to thank our 4 clients, Chloé Basten from Nestlé, Anita Lamzik from Henkel, Jamie Fennell from Arla for the brand Starbucks, and Aurélie Gatou for General Mills to agree on sharing their case studies today, even though they can't, unfortunately, be here with us today for a live testimonial. During the next 45 minutes, we are going to go through first the influencer landscape with Raphael. Then Paul is going to explain in detail the research methodology, so the sales impact measurement, the ROI measurement of IRI. Then Raphael will go back to show you the concrete results of the past years, of the past campaigns we have run together with IRI. And then we will show you concrete case studies from Nestlé, Henkel, Starbucks, and even more. And at the very end, I will come back to do a short summary, give you the key takeaways, things to remember before a live Q&A. So there will be 10 minutes dedicated to answer all of your questions. So do not hesitate to use the live Q&A that is currently available in your live event feature. This is where we are going to pick your questions and answer them with our experts today at the very end. Also, for your information, this webinar is being recorded, so you will receive at the very end a video replay. Also, the presentation deck will be sent per email, and you can at any time download the content for free, even the case studies, directly on our Territory Influence website. For those of you just joining us, a warm welcome, and I wish you all a nice session. Raphael, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Delphine, for the introduction. Yeah, just to set the scene, I just wanted to quickly talk about the influencer landscape in 2021, where we've really seen that influencer marketing is becoming quite a strategic element in the marketing mix for most brands. Marketeers are increasing their investment into influencer marketing, with some companies even committing their entire marketing and media budget to influencer marketing. We've also seen marketing teams really exploring new social channels, such as TikTok or Clubhouse, and also exploring new types of influencers, particularly smaller ones, such as nano and micro influencers. And we've also seen that more brands really engage in more strategic long-term partnerships with influencers and ambassadors. And all of that has not been harmed by 2020, by the pandemic. Actually, it's the opposite. So influencer marketing has quite thrived in 2020, with consumers in lockdown really looking also towards creators and social influencers, but equally also for looking to friends and peers for information, for inspiration, for practical advice, but also for entertainment and distraction during the lockdown. So I'm sure you've experienced that yourself. I mean, millions of people have started, working out at home with some instructions from, YouTube fitness influencers, Others have started, cooking thanks to some recipes that consumers have shared on Pinterest. And parents, en masse flock to, TikTok for inspiration on what to do and how to keep their kids busy. And brands also have realized that, influencers can really be a big help in their efforts to engage with consumers because they were essentially the only ones who could still produce relevant, updated content during a time when most of the traditional advertising production was largely halted due to the lockdowns. So as a consequence of that, we've really seen, in fact, an increase in the number of influencer marketing campaigns in the second half year of 2020. So, however, on the other side, influencer marketing is still a relatively young marketing discipline. So there are still some challenges we are working to resolve. So the key questions here are how to detect fake followers, how to indicate, properly, legally paid partnerships, how to really calculate campaign KPIs, and how to receive, data from platforms that are more and more restrictive, and ultimately how to measure success of influencer marketing campaigns and link them to concrete KPIs and ultimately to sales impact and return on investment, which is the topic that we want to discuss today. And in particular, how to measure the sales impact of thousands of nano influencers. So just quickly talking about the different definitions that we use at Territory Influence to describe different types of influencers. Nano influencers for us are really the normal consumers that have a passion for brand and that love to speak about the product and hand out recommendations offline and online. Micro influencers, on the other hand, are more passionate about actually establishing an online presence. They are topic experts, so they are establishing a sizable amount of followers based on their passionate expertise for a certain topic. While macro influencers actually start to see influencer marketing as a profession. So they also seek a majority of their income through their activities on social media. While stars and celebrities, these are the influencers that we all know. And they are not only famous on social media, but they are also famous for being sports professionals or movie stars or other social celebrities. Most of the efforts, so if you go back to the topic of sales measurement and return on investments, there have been a lot of efforts focused on measuring the sales impact of macro and star influencers, which worked pretty well, especially for services and for categories that predominantly sell online. On the other hand, if we talk about nano influencers, it's been quite tricky because, first of all, when we activate nano influencers, we actually activate thousands of those people. So really difficult to measure the impact of each individual when you actually activate thousands of them. And secondly, much of their power lies in offline peer-to-peer recommendations, which are even more difficult to measure. So nano influencers are, just to zoom in a little bit on those, are essentially normal consumers with a deep affection, passion, or you could even say love for a brand, for a service, for a product. So how do you monitor their activity, especially in terms of offline word of mouth, especially in terms of real face-to-face peer-to-peer recommendations? How can brands actually connect this advocacy to offline or also online sales? And how to isolate those effects from all the other marketing activities that are going on at the same time, from in-store promotions, from media, from anything else that the brand is doing at any given point in time. So to answer these questions, we've partnered with retail measurement company IRI, and I'm very happy that Paul has joined us and is joining us today to explain their methodology in detail. Paul, handing over to you.
Thanks, Raphael. Hi, everyone. So just a bit of background. So I work in the media effectiveness team, which sits within the wider analytics team here in the UK. And we're the media centre of excellence for ROI Europe, which is why I'm lucky enough to have this Europe-wide partnership with the guys at Territory Influence. So the crux of the analysis that we use to evaluate Nano Influencer or word of mouth campaigns is test versus control, or A/B testing. So we work with territory influence way before a campaign actually goes live and recommend a city or region to be left dark with no recruitment of participants or ambassadors. So in each country, we've identified suitable test and control regions for use in the analysis. And we base this on things like population, retailer mix, also have social demographic metrics like employment rate, average house price, disposable income, etc. So this then gives us our starting point of a test and a control region. We then apply various matching criteria at a store level to identify the test and control pairs of stores that we then use in the analysis. So this criteria includes things like the store fascia or banner. So each pair of stores will always be within the same fascia. Then store size, so the square footage of the stores, the footprint, so that we know the ranges being stocked should be similar between each pair of stores. The fixture sizes, things like that should be similar as well. So then perhaps the most important is the benchmark sales. So we look at the pre-period before the campaign goes live for the featured brand, the featured product, the brand and the category. And we have all three of these metrics in there so that we're making sure that at each level they're the same, but then also making sure that in each pair of stores that the featured product isn't over or under indexed versus the brand, and that the brand isn't over or under indexed within the category. Then the next thing that we look at is the sales trend or correlation between those pairs of stores or the groups of stores, again, to make sure that they're tracking in the same way. And then when it comes to assortment, it's particularly important when a campaign's being run which is covering a range of products, so a product range where maybe not all of the full product mix is being stocked in every store. We make sure that in each of our pairs of stores that they're stocking the same product mix. So then from the robustness of this whole matching process, it then allows us to be statistically confident in the results that we see once the campaign goes live. So from all that criteria that I just mentioned, we're then able to isolate the sales impact of the Nano Influencer campaign over and above our selected control stores, or over and above what's happening naturally in the market. So this means that things like above the line advertising, price changes, promotions, seasonality, they're all being taken account of in the methodology, enabling us to quantify the true sales impact of the campaign. And then from this, we can calculate the resultant return on investment. So some of you may be used to seeing, maybe more used to seeing econometric modelling than this type of test versus control methodology. The main difference between the two is that econometric modelling is sort of designed to give a more strategic view over time of all key sales drivers. So media, price, promo, distribution, competitor price, promo, distribution, they're all split out as individual sales drivers. Whereas test versus control methodology is more tactical and it's designed to answer one simple question, really. What's the sales impact of my activity and what is the return on investment of that activity? So the great qualitative work that Territory Influence always do as part of each campaign does give very useful insight, particularly around changes in brand awareness and perception, which are being driven by the campaigns. But one thing that maybe the sales research does on top of that is that purchase intention is a good measure, but that's not actually saying that person makes that purchase, and that's where the sales evaluation comes in. So some of the largest manufacturers who do have their own specialist data science units, they've reviewed this methodology when we've been working with their brands, and they've given it full approval to use for their products and their campaigns. So to ensure the robust measurement, we do have some minimum recommended metrics and some guidelines. So each campaign needs to have 3,000 national participants to be able to evaluate that full impact. The weighted distribution figure here is more of a guide, as we can run the evaluations on MPD, but it would need to be approaching this figure during the campaign. The number of retailers is again a guide, but it makes sense that if people are talking about your brand in face-to-face conversations, we want those connections who are a benefit to that conversation to be able to find those products in store. Pass along samples or coupons, we find they're essential to drive the face-to-face engagement, so should always be included in any campaign. So from the ROI side, we have store level data coverage across all the main markets in Western Europe, you can see listed here, covering all major FMCG channels and retailers within. And whilst we don't have data to cover industries outside of FMCG, or indeed some markets like Central or Eastern Europe, if the data can be sourced, then there's no reason we can't take that data and then apply the same methodology to be able to calculate the sales uplifts. So the outputs from the analysis are very straightforward. It's not death by PowerPoint. Typically, there will be 6 to 10 data slides, which give the sales impacts over and above the controls, again, so over and above what's happening naturally in the market. And we build up from looking at the featured SKU level up to brand, up to manufacturer portfolio. If there's more brands within the category, then we look at the impact on key competitors and build up to the overall impact on the category. Despite the chart in the bottom left being one of the simplest slides that we include, it's also one of the most impactful because it shows really clearly the robustness of the matching in that pre-period, where there's promos or there's the spikes in the sales which are impacting sales in both the test and the control panels in exactly the same way. But then also it shows once we get to the campaign period that the lines hopefully disperse and show us clearly, as in this example, that the campaign is having a positive sales impact.
So now that we are clear on the methodology, let's look at some of the results that we've seen in the past years. We have, over the last 5 years, together with IRI, measured more than 50 campaigns for some of the best-known brands in the world, such as Ariel, Pampers, Nescafe, Kellogg's, Starbucks, Olay, Wagner Pizza, Uncle Ben's, Whiskas, and I could go on and on. But really, some of the leading companies and brands in the field. And we've done these measurements not only in one country, but we've measured several campaigns in France, in Germany, in the UK, in Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands, looking at store level data from again some of the well-known retailers, be it Carrefour, Tesco, DM, Sainsbury, Delhaize, Intermarché, all the ones that Paul mentioned, they can capture directly in those markets. And the results were really quite astonishing for both our partners, but also for us when they came in, because all of these campaigns that we've conducted, every single one of them delivered measurable sales impact. We did not see a single case where IRI hasn't been able to prove that our nano influencers actually positively impacted the brands. And if you look at some of these results, we see that on average, we've activated in every single campaign around 4,200 nano influencers for each of these brands. They were really able to generate on average 12% uplift for the product that we focused on in the campaign, 6% at the brand level. Those are, as Paul mentioned, details that the ROI measurement can always provide for both, product level and brand level. The ROI was actually, 3.92 on the median. The average was even a little bit higher with €6 for every €1 invested into the campaign, thanks to some, positive outliers that delivered an even bigger return on investment. So let's look at some of the results per category. And we're just presenting categories where we have multiple measurements within the same category and also in multiple markets. So they're very, robust results. And the 4 categories where we had, multiple campaigns were beauty and personal care, food and beverage, household and cleaning, and baby care. So let's start with beauty and cosmetics. Those were, typically campaigns with one of the more larger campaign sizes. So on average, we activated 4,600 nano influencers per campaign. And they did an amazing job sharing product recommendations in real life, but also, we're very happy to post pictures and user-generated content online, which is not surprising given, it's the beauty category. And in turn delivered a really phenomenal uplift of 3% in the short term and an ROI of €3.3 on average. Let's move on to food and beverage. Here it's we've seen that on average our campaigns are a little bit smaller because that also includes frozen products and refrigerated products, which are per nature a little difficult to equip influencers with. But even here we've seen an average sales uplift of 16% across the range and an ROI of €4. Baby care is actually one of our best categories we've ever worked. We are really proud to support some of the leading brands there, and we see that nano influencers are really love to actually work with those product categories. I mean, similar to pet care, actually, people just love to talk about their babies and their pets, and they love to share pictures in social media about babies and pets. So it's not surprising that we also see very strong results here. And in fact, it's consistently one of these categories where we have the highest return on investment, both thanks to also high product prices on shelf, but also thanks to the fact that as you can imagine, mothers are listening to recommendations of other mothers and are really keen to understand what's the best for their babies. And similarly, you actually tend to really respect recommendations from friends and family when it comes to your beloved pets. So it is an extremely impactful product category to leverage the power of nano influencers. But even for kind of product categories which are not that sexy, like household and cleaning, we are seeing that we can consistently deliver strong sales uplift here with 5% on average and a return on investment of nearly €7 for every euro invested. So I guess the key question you all have by looking at those numbers is, well, how do you actually activate all those people? How do you activate thousands of nano influencers for a brand? And that's really thanks to a very well proven and well developed process we've developed over the last 15 years or so. That's roughly always looking the same, and it always follows those same steps. So it all starts with identifying and selecting the right ambassadors. So at Territory Influence, we have access to more than 4 million validated profiles of nano influencers that are registered on our various platforms across Europe. These people are really providing us with lots of insights and data on their preferences, on their purchasing habits, on the categories they use, on the brands they like, on their interests and hobbies. So based on that set of data, but also based on proprietary algorithms we've developed over the years, we are able to identify the best potential ambassador that perfectly matches each individual product, each individual campaign, and each individual task that we ask them to do. At this stage, we also coordinate with IRI to make sure that we have this kind of dark area left alone without any of our participants in as a test or as a control area, I should say, for the measurement plot. And then it's all about activation. So activation is critically important as well. It's not just about sending products to those people. It's much more. It's about education. It's about empowerment. It's about engaging with those participants to really turn them into active ambassadors. And we do that through empowered engagement tools, through gamification, through involvement, through interaction on a nearly daily basis through multiple offline and online channels. And we important, because that I'm sure that question always comes up, we never pay those people. So our nano influencers are never paid. They might receive a product so that they actually can experience the product benefits, but they never receive any monetary compensation. So it's really important that we engage with them, we educate them, we motivate them in the right way so that they actually become credible ambassadors for the brand and the product. And then at the end of the campaign, which typically lasts between 3 to 6 weeks, we start the measurement phase. So we on our side, as Paul mentioned, we measure the typical elements of any influencer campaign. So we measure the amount of online content that has been published. We measure the reach we generated online, but also the reach we generated offline. We measure the amount of people that had the chance to try out our product, and we measure purchase intention before we actually look out to IRI for their analysis of what's going on in store and to prove actually that what we did has delivered a measurable sales uplift. So about 6 months ago, we applied this process to a campaign we have set up for Henkel Beauty Care in Germany, where we identified 10,000 nano influencers out of our database interested in anti-age skincare. So our influencer relations experts then engage with those profiles to educate them on the brand, on the heritage of the brand, on the product usage, on the USPs and benefits of the product. They guided our participants on how to use the products correctly for themselves, so they could experience the benefits and really enjoy the benefits for themselves, and therefore be able to really credibly recommend the product. We also provided them with lots of inspiration, with examples, with best practices on how to start a conversation with friends, with family members, with colleagues, and also with examples of what is the content that the brand would love to see online. Thanks to all of these efforts, our ambassadors managed to impact 1.3 million contacts in real life through peer-to-peer recommendations. They managed to publish thousands of content pieces on social media and recommendations and reviews on e-commerce that were able to generate more than 5 million impressions online. And all of this because we identified nano influencers that really love the brand, that have a passion for the product, and that credibly recommend the product to their friends. Paul, can you share what the impact was on retail sales that you were able to see?
Certainly. So close to 15% value sales uplift, again, over and above controls for the featured diadamine product, which when combined with the halo impact seen across the range, delivered a €3.58 return on investment. So this halo impact that we saw was both on the Lift Plus range, so the featured range, as well as other diadamine anti-aging products. So it's showing the benefit of the word of mouth in driving people to the fixture, and then the fact that diadamine brand that was being enthused about, and not just the featured product, really helped drive that halo influence, that halo uplift. The high value of the product in the beauty sector, also a factor behind that positive ROI, and helps to drive that nearly 200,000 incremental euros nationally.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Thanks a lot, Paul. So let's move to another case, this time from Spain, where we activated 3,000 nano influencers following the same logic that I explained before to support Starbucks double shot espresso. We here equip them with both a product for themselves so that they can enjoy the freshly brewed ice cold espresso, which by the way I'm enjoying myself as well, but also with some samples and coupons to pass on to their friends and family members and colleagues in the office. So they all fell in love with the product, as did I. They passed on nearly 1 million recommendations in real life, together with the product samples and the coupons, and generated more than 2.4 million impressions on social media. So Paul, let's look at what these recommendations online and offline delivered in terms of sales uplift.
So again, we see double-digit sales growth over and above control stores. In this case, each Nano influencer in the campaign is driving an additional 23 double shot units. But here's where we see, with it being a lower value product, as we sort of quite often see in the grocery campaigns, that whilst it does deliver above break even ROI, it's not quite up to that median level that we saw, which was close to €4. One other thing to note for this campaign is that because that product is more widely distributed in lots of different store formats, so that baseline level of sales can be lower. The baseline value of sales is lower where it's being sold through impulse channels. So that uplift, the strong uplift that we see, doesn't always reflect in sort of the huge ROIs that we see for some of the more specialist products, I guess, that are in more specialist retailers.
Yeah, sure. All right, let's move to another case, this time for a world famous diaper brand. And in fact, for this brand, we are not only running campaigns, but we're actually managing entire communities of brand ambassadors across Europe. We're very proud about our collaboration with them, since we're engaging with more than 300,000 parents 365 days a year to create ongoing grassroots influence, super powerful word of mouth recommendations offline, and really authentic content for social media. So we ran a couple of measurement studies as well for this brand, and in one of the campaigns I want to share with you, we formed a squad of 5,000 Nano influencers for a new product launch. We really managed to help the brand bust certain barriers of usage across country, I should say. We executed that campaign in multiple countries, and really help the parents to better understand how to use the product, when to use the product, and most importantly, how to share recommendations for the brand and for the product, so they can also help other friends and family members with small children to basically improve their life and make nappy changing a little bit more enjoyable. So within 4 weeks, those 5,000 Nano influencers managed to reach nearly 500,000 other parents. They generated more than 600,000 impressions on social media. They loved the product, they loved the brand, and hence also were able to really impact sales, which we're going to see in the next chart.
Exactly. So yet again, we see very strong sales uplifts being driven by the word of mouth from the Nano influencers, and this time with that high selling price for the brand, that does translate to very healthy ROIs, being driven by that incremental value that we can see, which is above £500,000 nationally. This one was run in the UK. As Raphael mentioned earlier, we do consistently see with baby and pet campaigns that it does deliver, both in terms of the uplift and the return on investment, because people really don't need much of an excuse to talk about their babies or their pets, and especially so when they have coupons or samples to pass along when they're having those face-to-face conversations.
Thanks, Paul. So the last two case studies happened in France. The very first one actually happened on our client CRM platform. So we have this white label solution. So we put at the service of the group Nestlé our technology, but also our expertise in a white label solution. So on their Crocon-la-Vie.fr platform, we activated 3,000 Nano Influencers in the first wave. So we actually, end of 2019 and early 2020, offered 2 campaigns for the water brand Epar. I don't know if you know that pretty local brand, but Epar is a natural mineral water that actually offers beyond hydration a specific benefit of improving intestinal transit. So we had to select a particular target group here. So only women with daughters to start working on the next generation. The women were aged 35 to 49 years old, and almost all of them suffered from constipation at least once per month. So nearly 80% had very regular challenges with constipation. The first campaign was measured by ARI because it focused on product education, but also word of mouth activity and then drive to store, so sales, as the second one was complementary to the first and was all about UGC, so online content, so authentic posts on social media and community engagement. So the very first one is the one we are zooming in today in here, and you can see the results that were generated after the experience and after the recommendation. Everything was also triggered thanks to 20 product coupons that were available for each single Nano influencer. And at the end, so we got almost 500,000 of contacts offline and nearly 1 million of impressions on social media, and a very positive high recommendation rate as product rating. We actually got also a 91 purchase intention, and we are going to see now with Paul how this was translated.
Thanks. So in this case, whilst the sales uplift over and above controls isn't huge, the size of the brand, together with the halo impact that we saw, is still driving a strong return on investment at both the specific featured SKU and at the brand level. And funnily enough, being driven by €500,000 incremental euros yet again. The other key output from this study, which can be identified because we do measure key competitors in all of our analysis, was that 2 of Nestlé's biggest competitors suffered from steal during when the campaign was live.
Thanks, Paul. And then the very last case, again in France. So this one happened on our own community platform, so TRND.fr. So we supported the launch of a whole new range called All del Paso Ristorante of the group General Mills. So here the main difference was how creative the experience and the concept, the storytelling was. So we basically created a Mexican experience. So from the application phase, where we invited Nano influencer to share with us their love for Mexican culture by sharing like symbols of Mexico, to the selection when they received a very eventful box at home with plenty of goodies, but also those assets to organize at home Mexican parties, Mexican nights with their friends. We really created this traveling experience. Even the project guide was turned into a passport, and they have small flight tickets to share around to really create this road trip with friends. So this very viral offline online campaign managed for the brand to get almost 1 million unique contacts offline as well as on social media. This happened so in 6 weeks because we had a pre-campaign phase with that sort of excitement and engagement based on the Mexican trip, and plenty of coupons because we wanted to have a road trip. So basically the very first experience happened at the influencer place, but after they have played with the traveling wheel, they had to pick the second host and then the third and then the fourth to discover the different SKUs, the different recipe, the different products of that new range, enabling through the coupons to buy at lower cost the entire range, and then if they were satisfied, of course, to repurchase. So it was a pretty creative and smart way to make it viral and to push sales, to drive traffic to store. And we are going to see now the actual results with Paul.
Okay. I believe this was one of the first studies that we ran together with ROI and Territory. So this one was run directly through our French office before our media centre of excellence in the UK was even created to handle all the European studies, which now go through one point of contact, me. So we saw a similar picture here, as we see in the other grocery campaigns, that there's strong value sales uplift over and above controls, but the low selling price, being a grocery product, keeps the ROI just below the median point, but again, still well above break even and close to €3 for every €1 spent. And as we see for most of the word of mouth studies that we do with Territory, we again see strong halo impact on the brand, which is a similar sales growth figure in this case as we see for the featured products themselves.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Raphael. So it's time to check the things you need to remember, the key takeaways for your brand strategy. So the very first thing is, as you have observed over the past minutes, nano influencers and offline recommendations are profitable, at least most of the times. And when we see that chart made by Ari, based on their data across Europe, and here you can see the detail of every single touch points, like the classic advertising, the classic traditional media touch points. Offline influencers through nano influencers are really more profitable, and that's actually more than 8, almost 9 times more than the average of 0.45 euro. So they are profitable, but why? As you might have understood today, also with Raphael's explanations, peer-to-peer, peers trust each other. So peer-to-peer recommendation work because they are authentic, they are reliable, they are non-intrusive, and this is super important for the success of the campaign. So our tips today would be for you brands, marketers, to let go in a way that you need to trust them. You need to trust also middlemen to select the right profiles, to guide but not influence participants, which is very important. We can educate consumers for your products, for your innovations, but we should not give any BAs, because their word is what is actually working, what's actually converting, turning their friends into potential buyers. So this neutral sort of way of working is super critical for nano influencer campaign. Also, we equip them, but we need to always think of adding conversation and trial triggers so they can, in a non-intrusive, but so organic, but still smart way, spread that word and touch as many contacts as possible during this 4-week phase. And of course, to do so, to stimulate offline activity, we can create plenty of creative missions. So we have seen the example of Old El Paso. So those are things we can brainstorm at each operational stage to boost, to maximize the marketing KPI. So here, very important, nano influencers can't be seen, perceived, and worked as micro, macro, or star influencer. We need to adapt the whole process, the whole collaboration, so it works, so it sounds and is actually authentic. And the very last one, so while you are letting go and giving us and influencers the freedom, you can focus on measuring what really matters. And here we actually advise to team up with partners like IRI to do so, because we know ROI is a super strategic metric. We also know that having only short-term thinking is super limited, so we should not have only short-term thinking, of course, but in times of crisis, in times of COVID-19, but in general, in our life as marketers, we know we are always, like, we need constantly to give proof that things work. I mean, our spendings are controlled. So if we want to avoid any cuts, we need to prove that it's working. So the short term is still important now, but also in the future. However, we also know that ROI has plenty of definitions. So here we were talking about the purest aspects of the standard financial ROI. Of course, you might have plenty of other ways to define and measure it. Like it could be new trial list for your market penetration. So here the idea is more to measure what really matters for you and to not limit yourself to see that as a KPI, a benchmark, a point of comparison to always improve and do better for the future, to work on your effectiveness. And sometimes it can be through effective creativity. So if we had to summarize, we can really say today that everybody is an influencer, can be an influencer. It's not only through thousands and millions of followers that you can spread the word and have viral campaigns. Actually, the Nano, you guys, me, our parents, our neighbors can do the job and can do it very effectively. Here we have seen that ARI managed pretty well to adapt the retail sales impact methodology with that test versus control and also the pre versus post campaign system for offline influencer, together with our campaigns at Territory Influence. In terms of results, I think those were pretty clear and significative. So the average product sales uplift is 12%. So for the product level, on a brand level, we have a median ROI of nearly €4, which is almost 9 times more than the other traditional media. So this should be definitively something to consider as a brand. And I mean, you have seen here the largest manufacturers in FMCG like P&G, Nestlé, Henkel, Unilever, General Mills, and more are doing it. So why not you tomorrow to improve your marketing KPI? That being said, I've already noticed plenty of questions in the Q&A. So if you haven't done so yet, please do it. You have until 6 p.m. to submit your questions. And in the meantime, we are going to pick some of them, and I will share them with Paul and Raphael, so you have the experts' answer in live. So let's start with the very first one that came at 5 p.m. 20. Is this methodology for lift only used for extracting nano influencer impact, or can you use it for other advertising channels? And I guess this one is for you, Paul.
Yeah. Yep, good question. And yes, we can utilize the test versus control method for other advertising channels. Test versus control we would typically use for sort of digital, social, mobile campaigns, which sort of ties into the higher level influencer. So it always needs to use the methodology, we need that dark area. So if it's above the line, then if that can be turned off in an area, then we can evaluate that, whether it's TV or radio. For digital, if it's through social media, and particularly for influencers, if it's paid delivery through any channels, then that can be turned off in a region or blocked from being distributed, and that gives us our controlled region, which we can then use the same test versus control methodology to match, use our store level data and our matching criteria to then be able to measure the sales impact.
Thanks, Paul. Then let's jump into the second question. I guess this one would be more for Raphael. Do you also work with other typologies like micro and macro influencers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we focus today's webinar on the impact of nano influencers and offline word of mouth, but we are really activating the entire influencer marketing pyramid. We work with, we're conducting a lot of micro influencer campaigns these days, but we also have a big database of macro influencers and star influencers we can activate. So it really depends on the marketing objectives and the consumer target group that brands wants to reach. We are able to recommend the right type of influencer and the right social channel, whatever the objective is.
Thanks, Raphael. And then I guess this leads us into the next question regarding how do we measure effectiveness of online influencers? So those famous micro, macro, even star influencer, obviously they are not activated for offline activity or word of mouth. This would be wasting their thousands and millions of followers. So maybe Paul, you can start, and I think Raphael, you can then complete.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we can measure the effectiveness of the online influencers in terms of offline sales by managing how that paid influencer message is being delivered. Well, unfortunately, when it comes to online sales impact, that is where it becomes tricky. Unless, as I think Raphael mentioned earlier, if the influencers, that higher level influencers, are directing people to an online channel, then it's very easy to evaluate the sales impact that's having. In terms of online sales for FMCG, that's where it becomes a bit more tricky, because a lot of the times the retailers, we can't get the data, they don't share the data at the granular level that we need to be able to do the evaluations. So it's very often just one national figure. So we can't use the test versus control. It can be evaluated with back to the full-on econometric modelling. Then influencers can be included there the same way any above the line activity could be included in econometric modelling, but it becomes a much bigger study to be able to pick out that impact.
Yeah, I would just add, I think, I mean, sometimes that's the reason why we still use proxies like, discount coupons, electronic discount coupons that you can redeem online, so that we have at least, some insights into the level of conversion. We can obviously track, click-through rates to e-commerce or DTC sites, and I think tendentially with the rise of social commerce, it will be easier to measure than also the sales impact online, because I mean, if every influencer gets a buy now button, which is connected directly to an e-commerce shop, that's going to be pretty straightforward to measure.
Thank you, guys. We have a question regarding how do we find nano influencers in our campaign? Is it a database? So yes, as Raphael mentioned earlier, we have 4 million nano influencer profiles that are registered to our own platforms. So they are usually called TRND across Europe. So we have TRND.e, territory, .fr, .es, .it. So across Europe, we have plenty of communities where consumers can register and become nano influencers and can take part in different marketing projects. So collaborate directly with brands through us to manage the whole thing with dedicated teams like project managers.
Yeah, and maybe adding on this, the campaign that you explained, you described for Nestle. So we can use our technology also basically as a turnkey solution to connect to any existing CRM program. So if you have a sizable CRM database already out there, we can actually really help you connecting to that database, and then use our technology, use our algorithms to identify suitable influencers within your own CRM system. So really identify not only who is buying your product and how often they're buying, but also whether they have influence, whether they reach out and are able to reach out to substantial amount of friends and followers, both offline and online, and we can contact them and really turn them into ambassadors and nano influencers. But yeah, so we have both options, right? So we can use our own databases, our own panels, or we can work directly with panels from brands and clients.
True. And we can combine nano influencers as well with professionals. So for instance, paid micro, paid macro, or even star influencer. And in that case, we would combine TR&D with InCircle's platform. So we have different brands and different type of websites depending on the typology. Next question would be for Paul and Irene. I am not listed in grocery stores and I am based in Poland. Can I measure still my influencer ROI?
Okay, so the offline impact could be measured, but it would depend on the availability of the data. So that's the type of data that we wouldn't have in-house. But if it can be sourced and supplied to us, then there's no reason we can't apply the same methodology to it. And if anything does go down that route, we will sign all NDAs so that that data would only ever be used in measurement of that campaign and then disposed of.
All right. And for Raphael, we have a question regarding offline. So do you still have lots of offline focused campaigns, so the word of mouth ones, in today's digital world and even COVID-19 context? That's a good question.
Yeah, very, very good question. And in fact, today I just saw a research that measured an increase of 6% in offline conversations for last year. So despite the pandemic, despite all the restrictions and lockdowns, people actually talk more about brands and services and products with their friends. I guess it's due to the fact that, yeah, in these days of uncertainty, we do rely more on trusted sources than ever before. And a peer-to-peer recommendation, a recommendation from a friend, from somebody I know, is the most trusted, source of advice. So yes, definitely, still relevant today, and I assume it's still going to be relevant tomorrow and in the next decades, because we are essentially social beings. So we do love to talk. We live in not only in the digital world but also in real life, and we have chats with people. And the pandemic is going to go away. I mean, vaccination is progressing, so people will also be able to go out again, have a coffee, enjoy meeting with friends outside, so and indoors as well. So offline word of mouth still important.
Thanks, Raphael. And we have one very last question that is pretty tricky. I'm not sure we can fully answer it. So that's about the condition of having a minimum of 3,000 influencers, asking what is the average cost of each influencer versus the ROI obtained. So here, I mean, we can't really give publicly budgets. So what we generally suggest to you who are interested in the pricing of influencer marketing and wants to have a quote is to contact us so we can check on your objectives. So we can also, I mean, there are so many ways and scenarios for a campaign and nano influencer campaign, depending on the volumes, your goals, where you are in Europe, what type of retailers, your products, when it's going to be launched, is it an innovation? I mean, there are so many parameters. It's very hard to give you one standard price or one standard cost. So what we suggest generally is to have this exchange, maybe a briefing, so we can more in details give you an idea of what would be the cost for your brand, your case, your product. Maybe Raphael, you have an extra additional explanation.
I'm not exactly sure I understand the question, but I think one of the important facts, as I said, is that actually the influencers, the nano-influencers, are never paid. So when you talk about cost of each influencers, they don't request payment. That's important. Obviously, we need some budget to be able to conduct these campaigns and engage with those people over long term, answer all the questions, guide them, take them, each one of them by the hand to make sure they have a positive product experience, and then inspire them and empower them and activate them as ambassadors. But for each of those investments, you get €4 in revenues in return. So that's the outcome of the IRIS study, is that on average, if you let's take any amount, if you invest €10,000 into a territory influence campaign, you will get on average €40,000 in revenues in return. So that's the simple math. And then obviously, as Delphine, as you said, it depends on the product category, on the price of the product, on the exact task that we ask those influencers to do, and a lot of other facts. But we can look into your details, and Esther, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share more details based on your specific situation.
Yes, and you actually have here our contact details, so do not hesitate to proceed with an email after the event, either to us or with Ari or both of us, depending on your questions and emergencies. But we will be pleased to answer all extra questions, also because that's the time to say goodbye. So again, a big thanks everyone for your participation and for your time. Again, if you need extra details or ad hoc solutions, do not hesitate to contact us afterwards. You will also receive tonight the presentation deck as well as the video replay. And again, at any time, you can download it for free directly on our Territory Influence website. Again, thanks. Have a nice evening and see you soon for our next marketing webinar.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.